pressed his thumb against the scanner and waited for his apartment door to unlock. It had been another long day at the software company, fixing code that other people had broken. His eyes hurt from staring at screens, and his back ached from sitting in that terrible office chair. All he wanted was to heat up some leftover rice, watch something mindless on the screen, and forget about work. The door clicked open, but before he could step inside, he heard a sound. A soft clicking noise, like someone tapping their fingers on a hard surface. Turned around and saw his neighbor standing in the hallway. Ara was hard to miss. She stood almost 7 feet tall, with a body that looked like it was covered in smooth, dark purple armor. Her 4 arms were folded against her body, and her large compound eyes reflected the hallway lights like tiny mirrors. She was one of the species that had joined Earth after first contact 15 years ago. Had seen her around the building for the past 2 years. They had nodded to each other in the elevator, said brief hellos in the parking lot. He knew she had lost her husband in some kind of accident. He knew she had a daughter, but that was all. They were not friends. They were just neighbors who happened to live on the same floor. "Hello," said, trying to sound friendly despite his tiredness. "Is everything okay?" Ara's mandibles moved in a way that could not read. The translator device on her chest hummed softly before speaking. "I need help. I do not know who else to ask." Felt his stomach tighten. He was not good with people asking for help. He never knew what to say or do. What kind of help? "My daughter," Ara said. The translator made her voice sound flat but could hear something underneath it. Something that sounded like worry. "She is not well. I do not understand what is wrong with her." "Is she sick? Should you call a doctor?" "No, not sick in the body, sick in the mind, perhaps in the heart." Ara's lower arms unfolded, her hands opening and closing. "She does not speak. She does not eat much. She sits in her room and stares at the walls. It has been like this for 6 months, since her father died." Shifted his bag from one shoulder to the other. He wanted to help, but he did not know anything about children. He barely knew how to take care of himself. "I'm sorry about your husband, but I don't understand how I can help." "You are human," Ara said simply. "My daughter is half human. Her father was human. I do not understand human grief. I do not understand human feelings. My people, we do not mourn the way you do. When someone dies, we simply move forward. We return their body to the earth and continue living. But humans are different. And my daughter, she is more human than in her heart." Had not known that Ara's husband had been human. He tried to imagine what that relationship had been like, how they had met, how they had fallen in love despite being from different worlds. "I have read books," Ara continued. "I have watched videos about human grief, but reading and watching are not the same as understanding. I am afraid I am failing her. I am afraid she will never come back to me." The way she said those last words made his chest hurt. He thought about his own father who had died when was 12. He remembered how empty the world had felt, how nothing made sense anymore. His mother had not known what to do with him and his sister. They had all been lost together. "Can you just talk to her?" Ara asked. "Can you try to help her understand that what she feels is normal, that it will not last forever?" Wanted to say no. He wanted to make an excuse and go into his apartment and close the door, but he found himself nodding instead. "I can try, but I'm not a therapist or anything. I don't know if I'll be any good at this." "You are human," Ara said again. "That is enough." She turned and walked to her door 3 units down from his apartment. He followed her, his heart beating faster than usual. The door opened into a space that looked similar to his own apartment but decorated differently. The furniture was lower to the ground. The walls were painted in deep purples and blues, and everything was very, very quiet. Ara called out, "Someone is here to meet you." A door opened down the hallway and a small figure appeared. The girl looked about 8 years old. She had black hair cut short around her face and large dark eyes that reminded of her mother's, though they were human-shaped. Her skin was pale with a slight purple tint. She wore a simple blue shirt and black pants, and she stared at without saying anything. "This is," Ara said. "He lives nearby. He came to say hello." Did not respond. She just stood there looking at him with those big, sad eyes. Knelt down so he was closer to her height. "Hi, your mom told me you like to stay in your room a lot. I do that too sometimes. Rooms can feel safe, right?" Nothing, not even a nod. "I lost my dad when I was a bit older than you," continued, not sure what else to say. It felt like the whole world had stopped making sense, like nothing would ever be good again. For the first time, his expression changed slightly. Her eyes focused on him more directly. "But it does get better," said quietly. "Not all at once, not quickly, but slowly, bit by bit, the world starts to make sense again. The sadness doesn't go away completely, but it gets smaller. It becomes something you can carry instead of something that crushes you." Blinked, then very slowly she took one step toward him. It was not much, just one small step, but Ara made a sound that the translator did not convert into words, a sound of hope. Stayed kneeling on the floor and took another step, and then another, until she was standing right in front of him. She did not say anything. She did not smile, but she reached out one small hand and touched his sleeve, her fingers gripping the fabric gently. Looked up at Ara and then back at. "Would it be okay if I came back to visit sometimes?" he asked the girl. "Maybe we could do something together, draw or watch something or just sit quietly, whatever you want." His grip on his sleeve tightened just a little bit. "I will make tea," Ara said, her voice thick with emotion even through the translator. "Please stay for a while." And so stayed, sitting on the floor of his neighbor's apartment, while a small half-human girl held onto his sleeve like it was a lifeline. He did not know if he could really help her. He did not know if anything he said or did would make a difference. But he knew he had to try. 3 weeks passed, and found himself visiting Ara's apartment almost every day after work. At first, would only sit in the same room with him, watching him from across the space while her mother prepared food or cleaned. She never spoke, but she was always there, those dark eyes following his every movement. Brought small things with him: a book about stars, a puzzle with bright colors, a tablet loaded with simple drawing programs. He would show these things too and then just leave them nearby, not forcing her to interact. Sometimes she would ignore them completely. Other times, after he left, Ara would tell him that had picked them up and examined them for hours. On the 4th week, something changed. Arrived with a set of colored pencils and paper. He sat down at the low table and started drawing. He was not a good artist, but he liked sketching simple things: trees, buildings, clouds. Drifted closer, watching from a few feet away. Kept drawing, pretending not to notice. He drew a simple house with a door and windows. Then he drew a stick figure person standing next to it. "This is me," he said quietly, pointing to the stick figure. "Going home after a long day." He pushed a blank sheet of paper across the table, along with some colored pencils. "You can draw too if you want, or not, whatever feels right." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then moved forward and sat down at the table. Her hand hovered over the pencils. She picked up a purple one. Then she pressed it against the paper and drew a single curved line. Smiled but did not make a big deal of it. He just kept drawing his own picture. Drew another line, then another. Slowly, a shape began to form. It looked like a person, though could not tell if it was meant to be human or something in between. They drew together in silence for 20 minutes. When finally had to leave, did something unexpected. She stood up and walked him to the door. She did not say goodbye, but she lifted one hand in a small wave. It was progress. The next day, brought his younger sister with him. Worked at a medical research facility and was much better with people then. She was warm and easy to talk to, with a smile that made everyone feel comfortable. "This is my sister," told when they arrived. "She wanted to meet you." Knelt down, not getting too close. "Hi, Your mom told my brother that you're half human, just like how I'm fully human. But you know what? That makes you special. You get to understand two different worlds instead of just one. Tilted her head, listening. When our dad died, continued, her voice gentle, I stopped talking too, for almost a year. Everyone kept trying to make me feel better, but I just wanted to be quiet. I wanted to feel sad without anyone telling me not to. Is that how you feel? Stared at for a long moment. Then, very slowly, she nodded. It was the first clear response she had given to anyone in months. Ara, standing in the kitchen, made that untranslatable sound again. Sat down on the floor, crossing her legs. Want to know what helped me? Drawing pictures of all my feelings. When I was angry, I drew angry pictures with lots of red and black. When I was sad, I drew blue pictures. When I missed my dad, I drew pictures of him. It helped get the feelings out of my head and onto the paper where I could see them. She pulled out a small sketchbook from her bag. I brought some of my old drawings. Want to see? Moved closer, curious. Opened the book and showed pages filled with childish drawings. Some were messy scribbles of dark colors. Others showed stick figures holding hands. One page had a simple drawing of a man with a big smile. That's my dad, said softly. I drew this on a day when I was really missing him. It made me feel a little better to put him on paper, like he was still here in some way. Reached out and touched the drawing gently with one finger. Over the next 2 weeks began to draw more. She filled page after page with pictures. Some were dark and heavy with purple and black. Others showed figures that might have been her parents. Never asked her to explain them. He just let her draw. One evening, while was visiting, there was a knock on Ara's door. She opened it to find another neighbor standing there. His name was H, whose body was made of crystalline structures that glowed with soft blue light. He shifted uncomfortably, his light flickering. I apologize for the interruption, H said through his translator. I heard that a human has been helping with emotional difficulties. I have a problem that I do not understand. My business partner, who is human, has been acting strangely. She says she is getting divorced and cannot focus on work. I do not understand divorce. I do not understand why this affects her work performance. Can the human explain? Blinked in surprise. He had not expected this. I'm not really an expert on this stuff. But you helped, H said. Ara told others in the building. You understand human emotions in a way we do not. Ara looked at apologetically. I may have mentioned it to a few neighbors. They were curious about why I was improving. Before could respond, another knock came at the door. This time it was an amphibious with smooth green skin and large eyes. Is this where the human emotional expert is? My son is having problems with other children. They bully him because he has human friends. I do not know how to help him. Felt overwhelmed. I'm really not an expert. I just talked to because her mom asked me to. But you understand, insisted. Please. I have tried everything my people suggest, but nothing works. Maybe human wisdom is different. Who was still sitting on the floor looked up at her brother with an amused smile. Looks like you've started something. I don't know what I'm doing, protested. None of us do, said. That's why people need help. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to care and try. Ara stepped forward. If is willing, perhaps we could all sit together, share our problems, try to understand each other. Is this not what humans call support groups? Looked around the room, at who was watching him with those big eyes, at his sister who was smiling encouragingly, at the two alien neighbors who were looking at him with desperate hope, at Ara, who had started all of this by simply asking for help. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Okay, fine, but I'm going to need more chairs. And so, in a small apartment in a mixed-species building on Earth, an accidental support group was born. Had no training, no expertise, no qualifications. But he had something that was apparently rare in the galaxy. He had the ability to understand that feelings mattered, that emotional pain was real pain, That sometimes people just needed someone to listen and say that what they were feeling was okay. It was a small thing, such a small thing. But sometimes small things can change everything. For the first time in 6 months, picked up a pencil and wrote 2 words on her paper. Thank you. She showed it too, and though she did not smile, her eyes were a little less sad than before. Felt his throat tighten with emotion. He nodded at her, unable to speak. Same time tomorrow, asked the room. Everyone agreed, and the small support group grew a little bit bigger. Word spread fast through the building, then through the neighborhood, and then across the city. Within a month, S'apartment had become the unofficial meeting place for aliens who were struggling with problems they did not understand. Problems that their own cultures did not prepare them for. Problems that seemed uniquely human. His living room could barely fit everyone. On Tuesday evenings, 15 to 20 beings from a dozen different species would crowd into the space. Some sat on his couch and chairs. Others sat on the floor. A few did not sit at all, like the floating gas-based wisp who hovered near the ceiling. Came to every meeting, and she convinced a friend of hers to join. His name was a professional grief counselor who worked at a hospital, was quiet and thoughtful, with silver-rimmed glasses that made him look wiser than his 30 years. He brought structure to the meetings and helped guide conversations when they got too overwhelming. The key is to listen without judgment, explained to before one meeting. These beings come from cultures where emotions are seen as weaknesses or inefficiencies. Just by creating a space where they can talk about feelings, you're doing something revolutionary. Still felt like he was pretending to know what he was doing. But the people kept coming, so he must have been doing something right. The crystalline had become a regular. He was learning to understand his business partner better and had even started asking her how she was feeling instead of just focusing on work. My partner cried yesterday, he told the group one evening. Not from sadness, but from gratitude. She said no one at work had asked about her emotional state. I do not fully understand, but I think I did something correct. The group applauded, their various limbs and appendages creating a strange symphony of sounds. The shared that his son had stopped coming home with bruises. I talked to his teachers. I explained that my son's friendships with humans were important to him. I asked them to help protect those friendships. They were confused at first, but they agreed. In culture, we do not usually value friendships so highly, but I am learning that some human values have worth. Attended every meeting, sitting quietly next to her mother. She still did not speak much, but she smiled sometimes. She drew pictures during the meetings and occasionally showed them to others. She was healing, slowly but surely. One Tuesday evening, there was a knock at the door in the middle of a session. Opened it to find a being he had never seen before. The alien stood over 8 feet tall, with dark red scales covering its body and bright yellow eyes that seemed to look right through him. The creature wore an official-looking uniform with symbols that recognized as Galactic Coalition markings. I am Ambassador X, the being said through a translator device. I am here to observe this gathering. The room went silent. Everyone knew what the Galactic Coalition was. It was the governing body that oversaw relations between all spacefaring species. Ambassadors did not show up to random apartment meetings unless something was wrong. Please come in, said, trying to keep his voice steady. X entered, and the other beings shifted to make room. The ambassador's large frame dominated the space. He sat down on a reinforced chair that had bought specifically for larger species. Continue as you were, X said. Pretend I am not here. That was impossible, but they tried. Guided the conversation back to where they had been. A young named Binna was talking about how she felt pressure from her family to mate and produce offspring, but she did not feel ready. In culture, emotions about such decisions were not considered relevant. Only biological readiness mattered. But you are not just a biological machine, said gently. You are a person with feelings and fears and hopes. Those things matter. If you are not ready emotionally, then you are not ready, period. My family says I am being infected by human weakness, Binna said quietly. X made a sound that might have been disapproval. It is not weakness to have feelings, said, trying to ignore the ambassador's presence. Every species experiences emotions. Humans just learn to accept them and work with them instead of pushing them away. That does not make us weak. It makes us honest. And what good does this honesty do? X asked suddenly, his deep voice cutting through the conversation. I have reviewed reports of this group. You teach beings to dwell on their emotions, to slow down and feel things deeply. In a galaxy where efficiency and logic are valued, how is this helpful? The room went quiet again. Several beings looked down at the floor, as if ashamed to be there. Felt anger rise in his chest. With respect, Ambassador, these people came here because efficiency and logic were not helping them. H's business was failing because he could not understand why his partner was struggling. Sun was being hurt because logic said friendships do not matter, was shutting down because no one in her life understood grief. How is any of that efficient? X's yellow eyes focused on. You are saying emotions serve a practical purpose. Yes, said firmly. Emotions are not a distraction from life. They are a part of life. Ignoring them does not make them go away. It just makes them come out in worse ways later. Stopped eating. H's business was collapsing. Sun was getting hurt. Those are practical problems caused by ignored emotions. Interesting theory, X said. But I see no proof. I see only a group of beings indulging in feelings that their own cultures have learned to move past. Ara stood up suddenly. Her 4 arms unfolded and she moved to stand beside. Before I met, I was losing my daughter. She was fatting away day by day and I did not know how to stop it. My culture gave me no tools to help her. Human emotional understanding saved her life. Is that not proof enough? One child, X said dismissively. One case. Then look at all of us, said, standing as well. Every being in this room has been helped by human methods. We are not weaker for it. We are stronger. We function better in our lives and our work. I can do my job again, H added, his crystalline body glowing brighter with emotion. My business partner is happy. Our company is more successful than before, because I learned to care about emotions. More beings stood up, one by one, sharing their stories. The gas-based wisp descended from the ceiling and shared how learning about human friendship helped it connect with its colleagues. A feline explained how understanding grief helped it cope with losing its mate. X listened to all of them, his expression unreadable. When the last person finished speaking, he stood up. I will file my report with the coalition. They will decide if this group should continue or if it should be shut down for promoting cultural contamination. With that, he left, the door closing behind him with a heavy thud. The room remained silent for a long moment. Then did something unexpected. She stood up and spoke her first words in front of the group. We are not contaminated, she said, her small voice clear and strong. We are just learning to be whole. Everyone turned to look at her. Ara's translator made a sound like a sob. Knelt down in front of, that was very brave. Looked at him with those big dark eyes. You taught me that feelings are not wrong, so I am not wrong to have them. No, said softly, you are absolutely not wrong. But as the meeting ended and people filed out, could not shake the worry in his chest. X had the power to shut them down. And if he decided that human emotional practices were harmful to other species, this group would be disbanded. All this progress, all this healing, could be taken away by one ambassador's report. Looked at Ara, at all the beings who had found help here. He could not let that happen, but he did not know how to stop it. 5 days after Ambassador X's visit, received a message on his communication device. It was an official summons to appear before a coalition review board. They would decide whether his support group represented beneficial cultural exchange or dangerous contamination. could not sleep the night before the hearing. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he would say. How could he prove that feelings mattered? How could he convince beings from species that valued pure logic that emotions had worth? The next morning, he put on his best suit and took the transport to the coalition building downtown. It was a massive structure of glass and metal that housed representatives from hundreds of worlds. Felt very small walking through its enormous doors. The hearing room was intimidating. A panel of 5 coalition officials sat behind a raised platform, looking down at where stood. X was among them, his yellow eyes cold and unreadable. The other officials represented different species, each one regarding with varying degrees of interest or skepticism. "You are," the lead official said. She was with pale blue skin and large, intelligent eyes. "You are accused of teaching other species to adopt human emotional practices, which may be harmful to their natural cultural development." "I am not accused," said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am being reviewed." "A distinction without a difference," X said. "You are here because you may be causing harm." "I am here because I help people who asked for help," replied. The lead official raised a hand for silence. "We will hear testimony from various beings who have attended your group. Then we will hear from cultural experts. Then we will make our decision." The hearing began. One by one, members of his support group. H explained how understanding emotions had improved his business and his relationship with his partner. Described how his son was happier and safer. Binna talked about how she had found the courage to make her own choices about her life instead of just following cultural expectations. But the coalition's experts countered each testimony. A cultural specialist argued that emotional awareness weakened the species' traditional strengths. A psychologist claimed that H's improved relationships were temporary and would eventually cause problems. A philosopher stated that encouraging individual feelings over collective logic was dangerous to societal cohesion. Back and forth the arguments went. Sat and listened, feeling more and more helpless. These were experts with degrees and research and centuries of cultural knowledge. What was he? Just a software engineer who happened to be kind to a neighbor's kid. Then, just as the lead official was about to call for a break, an urgent message came through. One of the officials stood up, their face showing alarm. "We have a situation. A deep space station has experienced a critical systems failure. Life support is degrading. The crew has approximately 6 hours of oxygen remaining." The room erupted in urgent conversation. The lead official tried to restore order. "This is terrible, but we must continue with the hearing." "The crew is mixed species," another official said, reading from their data pad. "Humans and others. Reports indicate that panic is spreading. The alien crew members are not coping well with the fear of death. The human crew members are trying to keep everyone calm, but it is not working. The alien crew members do not trust human emotional guidance in a crisis." X stood. "We will send a rescue ship immediately, but it will take 5 hours to reach them. The margin is too small." Who had been sitting in the observation section stood up suddenly. "Send me." Everyone turned to look at her. "Excuse me," the lead official said. "I am a medical researcher, but I have training in crisis psychology," said. "I can help the crew manage their fear. I can teach them techniques to stay calm and work together. We can get someone there faster with a small shuttle." "This is not the time for experimental human psychology," X said dismissively. "Then what is your solution?" challenged. "Let them panic and die while the rescue ship is still an hour away." The lead official looked troubled. "The young human makes a point. If the crew loses cohesion, they may not survive until rescue arrives, but sending her is risky." Ara stood up next. "I will go with her. I have worked with. I understand her methods now. Together we can help the crew." X looked at. "This is what you have done. You have convinced beings to trust in human emotional practices. Now you want to test that trust when lives are at stake." Stood up, his heart pounding. Yes, because human emotional practices work. They work in my living room and they will work on that station. Fear is natural, panic is natural, but so is the ability to manage those feelings and work together despite them. Let try, please. The officials conferred quietly among themselves. Finally, the lead official spoke. You have 1 hour to reach the station before the rescue ship. If the crew survives because of your intervention, we will consider it evidence in favor of human emotional practices. If they do not, this hearing will end in your disfavor. Do you accept these terms? And Ara nodded without hesitation. Then go, the lead official said, quickly. The next 4 hours were the longest of his life. He sat in the hearing room with the officials and observers, watching the live feed from the station. An Ara had arrived and were now moving through the damaged station, going from crew member to crew member. The feed showed scared beings huddled in corners, some hyperventilating, others frozen in fear. Moved calmly among them, teaching breathing exercises, talking them through their terror. Fear is okay, she said over and over. Feel it, acknowledge it, and then let it pass through you. You are not your fear. You are the person who can choose what to do next. Ara worked alongside her, using her own presence to comfort the crew members. I learned these techniques from humans, she told them. They work, trust me. Slowly, the crew began to calm. They started working together on repairs, coordinating their efforts instead of panicking separately. A human crew member showed an engineer how to use visualization techniques to focus despite fear. A who had learned about emotions from his group helped another process their terror. The station systems were failing faster than expected. Oxygen levels dropped critically low. But the crew kept working, kept supporting each other, kept using every minute they had. When the rescue ship finally arrived with 45 minutes of oxygen to spare, the entire hearing room erupted in relief. The crew was alive. All 47 beings had survived, and they had done it by working together, by managing their fear instead of letting it control them. The lead official stood up. We have seen what we needed to see. Ambassador X, do you still believe human emotional practices are harmful? X was quiet for a long moment. His yellow eyes watched the screen as the crew members embraced each other, crying with relief. I believe, he said slowly, that I was wrong. Emotions are not a weakness to be eliminated. They are a reality to be understood and worked with. The human approach has merit. He turned to, you have proven your point, not with words but with results. I will recommend to the coalition that human emotional sciences be recognized as a valuable field of study. Felt his legs go weak. He sat down hard in his chair. The lead official smiled, a strange expression on her face. The hearing is concluded. Support group is officially sanctioned by the Galactic Coalition. Furthermore, we will establish a committee to explore how emotional intelligence can be integrated into coalition training programs. When an Ara returned to the building an hour later, met them at the entrance. He hugged his sister tightly, not caring who saw. You saved them. We saved them, corrected. All of us. Every person in your support group who learned to understand emotions and share that understanding with others. This was never just about you. It was about all of us working together. Was waiting in the observation room. When Ara entered, the little girl ran to her mother and hugged her tightly. You were brave, she said. I learned from the best, Ara said, looking at. That night, the news networks across the galaxy ran the story. Human emotional intelligence saves 47 lives. The footage of the crew working together, supporting each other through fear, was broadcast to millions of worlds. And in a small apartment building on Earth, a support group prepared for their next meeting. Because the work was not done. It was only just beginning. 6 months after the space station rescue, stood in a room that he did not recognize. It was an office, large and professional, with windows that looked out over the city. On the wall was a plaque that read Coalition Center for Interspecies Emotional Welfare in 12 different languages. He still could not quite believe this was real. After the hearing, things had moved very quickly. The coalition had offered him a position as the first director of this new center. They wanted to create training programs, develop resources, and help species across the galaxy learn about emotional intelligence. It was a huge responsibility. It was also terrifying. "Are you sure about this?" he had asked when the offer first came. "I am just a software engineer. I do not have a degree in psychology or counseling or anything like this." Neither did the first people who figured out how to help others with emotions, had replied. "You have something better than a degree. You have compassion and experience. You have proven that you can make a difference. That is what matters." So had accepted. He had left his software job, said goodbye to his small apartment, and stepped into a role he never imagined he would have. Now, 3 months into the job, he was preparing for the first graduation ceremony. 1,000 beings from over 100 species had completed the initial emotional wellness training program. They had spent months learning about different types of emotions, how to recognize them in themselves and others, how to provide support, and how to create healthy emotional environments in their workplaces and communities. The ceremony was being held in a large hall. Stood backstage, adjusting his collar nervously. Beside him stood Ara, who had accepted a position as the center's cultural liaison. She helped bridge understanding between different species and explained human concepts in ways that made sense to non-humans. "Are you ready?" she asked, her translator making her voice sound warm. "I do not think I will ever feel ready for something like this," admitted. "Good," Ara said. "The moment you feel completely ready is the moment you stop trying to improve. Uncertainty keeps us humble and thoughtful." Appeared from behind a curtain. She was 9 years old now, and she spoke freely and smiled often. She attended a school for hybrid children and had friends from a dozen different species. She still drew, but her pictures were brighter now, filled with colors and hope instead of darkness. "They are almost ready for you, told. There are so many people out there. Are you scared?" "A little," said honestly. "That is okay," said, taking his hand. "Fear just means you care about doing well. That is what you taught me." Smiled down at her. Of everyone involved in this project was the reason he kept going. She was proof that emotional understanding could save lives and heal wounds. She was the first person he had helped, and she had become the symbol of everything this center represented. The ceremony began. Walked onto the stage to face a sea of beings from across the galaxy. Some were small, others were massive. Some had fur, others had scales, and some had bodies that did not fit any category he knew. But all of them had one thing in common. They had learned to understand emotions. "A year ago," began, his voice amplified across the hall, "I was just a regular person living in a small apartment. I knew nothing about psychology or therapy. I certainly never imagined standing here in front of all of you. But then my neighbor knocked on my door and asked for help with something I never thought about before. She asked me to help her daughter understand grief." He paused, looking out at the audience. "I almost said no. I almost closed my door and went back to my simple life. But I said yes instead, and that changed everything. Not just for me, but for everyone involved. Because sometimes the smallest actions can create the biggest ripples." The audience listened quietly. Could see H sitting in the third row, his crystalline body glowing softly, was nearby with his son. Binna sat with her family, who had learned to accept her choices, and were in the front row, both smiling proudly. "Every species in the galaxy has emotions," continued. "But for a long time, many species believed emotions were weaknesses, something to be controlled or eliminated or ignored. Humans learned differently. We learned that emotions are not the enemy. They are part of what makes us alive. They connect us to each other and to ourselves. They help us understand what matters and why." He gestured to the graduates sitting before him. All of you have spent months learning what humans have known for a long time. That sadness is not a failure. That fear is not cowardice. That love and friendship and grief are not distractions from life, but the very essence of life itself. You have learned to recognize emotions in yourselves and in others. You have learned to provide support and understanding. And now, you will take this knowledge back to your worlds and your communities. X, who was sitting in the audience as an honored guest, stood up. I would like to say something, if I may. Nodded, stepping aside. The large reptilian ambassador moved to the stage. When I first investigated support group, I believed it was harmful. I believed emotions made beings weak and inefficient. I was wrong. He looked directly at. The space station incident proved that emotional understanding can mean the difference between life and death. But more than that, the past 6 months have shown me that beings who understand their emotions are happier, healthier, and more productive. They form stronger communities. They solve problems more creatively. They live fuller lives. He turned to address the audience. The coalition has recognized emotional intelligence as a core for all member species. We will establish centers like this one across the galaxy. We will train emotional wellness specialists in every field. And we will remember that it was one human, helping one child, that started all of this. The audience erupted in applause. It was a strange sound, with beings using different appendages and methods to show approval. But the meaning was clear. After the ceremony, mingled with the graduates. They thanked him, shared their stories, and talked about their plans to bring emotional understanding to their communities. A young wanted to start a grief counseling service. A plan to teach emotional intelligence to business leaders. A hope to reform their education system to include feelings alongside logic. As the evening wound down, found himself standing with Aura and looking out over the city through the large windows. I received a message this morning, said, from a remote world near the edge of coalition space. They have heard about our programs. They want help understanding grief because they recently lost several members of their community in an accident. Will you go? Aura asked. I will send a team, said. We have trained people now, people who can help in ways I never could alone. That is the point, right? To spread this understanding as far as it can go. Tugged on his sleeve. But you started it, you were the first. I was the first to try, corrected gently. But the idea existed before me. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. I just happened to be the one who shared it with our neighbors. Any human could have done the same thing. But you were the one who did it, insisted. That matters. Looked down at her and felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the feeling he had learned to recognize as deep affection and pride. You are right. It matters that someone tried, and it matters that others kept trying after me. That is how change happens. One person helps another, who helps another, who helps another, until the whole galaxy is a little bit better. 1 year later, received a notification on his device. He opened it and smiled. The message was from that remote world at the edge of coalition space. They had completed their grief counseling program. They thanked him for sending help. They said their community was healing. Attached was a picture. It showed beings from a species had never seen before, standing together with their arms around each other. They were not smiling because their faces did not work that way, but their body language showed connection, support, hope. Saved the picture and added it to a wall in the center. It was one of hundreds now. Pictures from worlds across the galaxy, showing beings who had learned to understand emotions and were helping others do the same. He looked at that wall and thought about the day Aura had knocked on his door, how he had almost said no, how his whole life had changed because he had said yes instead. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest beginnings. A neighbor asking for help, a man who decided to try, a child who learned to speak again, a galaxy that learned to feel. His communication device buzzed. Another message, this time from a world he had never heard of. Someone else asking for help. someone else struggling to understand emotions they did not have words for. He sat down at his desk and began to write a reply. The work was never done. There would always be someone who needed help, someone who was struggling, someone who just needed to know that their feelings mattered, and would be there, along with thousands of others trained in emotional understanding, ready to help. Because that is what humans did best. They felt deeply, they cared completely, and they never stopped trying to make the galaxy a little bit kinder. One conversation at a time.